Welcome back to part 2 of the Typing of the Dead video. We're going to move on to chapter 4 now.
Everything's set. All we need to do is wait.
What happened to Amy and Harry? Have to hurry.
And if you looked very carefully, those enemies that I was just fighting right there were actually using coat hangers to fight, which is really crazy. And now this is another one of those missions. I think this one, as it doesn't have a number, this was basically survive for 30 seconds and don't get hit, which I was very happy to actually end up doing this, because I didn't think I would. And as I'd mentioned in the first video, you can actually hook up another controller. I actually got my numbering wrong. CN6 was for player 1, and CN7 was for player 2. CN6 being the pin header on the right, and CN7 being the pin header on the left. As you see there, I had survived for the 30 seconds and actually got through the mission. And that's one thing that throws me off a lot when it comes to accuracy. Typing on the keyboard isn't too hard, but if you're actually trying to type while you're and you're trying to get that hyphen, which is between number 0 and plus equals, it's very hard to hit that every time if you're not looking. And when you're playing this game, you really can't look down at the keyboard all that often. I really should have typed that a lot faster because all it was samurai, but sadly I didn't actually end up doing it and didn't save that guy. And now I can tell you, when it comes to the actual House of the Dead game, I actually never have beat it with the light gun. So in seeing this ending here, this was actually the first time I had ended up actually getting to the end of this storyline. And now the crazy thing with my camera is I'd expected to do like 4 gigabytes and then like put the end of the video on the end, but it was kind of like 3.66 gigs and it threw the end in another video, which luckily didn't actually have any like separation, which was pretty nice. I can remember when I would first be playing these games, I felt kind of bad for the people, but you know, after a while you kind of realize, they're just characters in the game, so it's not really all that bad. And that's another thing that's kind of a thing that annoys me a bit in this game sometimes. The question mark isn't too bad because the shift and the question mark are both on the right side, so it's...
Power still coming.
Now that was kind of a weird way of saying it. It's like, power's still coming. He should have said like, oh, the power works or something like that, but as I said, the voices in this game are kind of notoriously bad, so that's why it would be something weird like that. When I play a lot of these games, I figure that the person who actually wrote the dialogue, English wasn't their first language, or maybe they had learned English from like watching a TV show or something. Now, this game actually wasn't the last of the Typing of the Dead games, because once you got done with all those like extra versions, like Typing of the Dead 2004 and the one with the job seeking and everything, and even Typing of the Dead Zombie Panic, they actually did have more Typing of the Dead games. A sequel called Typing of the Dead 2 was actually released. Well, I'll tell you after this cutscene.
People of the AMS, I am Goldman. I don't care if you people try to get in my way or not. In time you'll find out who's right. This is a present from me to you. Look at your right.
Amy! Harry!
Well, friends, I look forward to meeting you people again.
Okay, and as I was saying about the sequels to this, Typing of the Dead 2 was game released actually in arcades in 2007, and then it got a PC version the following year, but only in Japan. And it was actually based off of the House of the Dead 3. So it was a basically that game, but with the typing version. Then they also got in Japan a game called English of the Dead, which was another version of House of the Dead 2, but it was like a language learning game for the Nintendo DS. Only in Japan in 2008, of course, because it's not something anyone would want to play otherwise. And that job hunting version of the game, which was called The Typing of the Dead Mina no Shoku Katsodu Nikki, which is a version that features a job hunting mode. It basically was this game, but it had a job hunting mode instead of just like the practice mode only. And of course the final one, on October 29th of 2013, you had The Typing of the Dead Overkill, which was a Typing of the Dead game based off of the House of the Dead Overkill, and it was released only on Windows, and I'm not sure if it got a physical release elsewhere, but I believe here in America it only got a Steam release. Now all they have to do, in my opinion, is make The Typing of the Dead 3 and base it off of House of the Dead 4. And another thing I would love to see is if they made like Typing of the Dead 0 and base it off of the first House of the Dead game, because I love the first House of the Dead game. I play that on my Sega Saturn all the time, and then when I see the Sega Model T arcade graphics of that, I'm always surprised how much better they look than the Sega Saturn can produce them. Now, I can honestly tell you, it kind of goes without saying, this isn't exactly an easy boss fight. It took me a while to type these crazy long phrases. And one thing I definitely have to mention is, one of the first times actually playing this, when I went through the first boss battle, one of the actual, okay, let me just let you see this cutscene here.
Amy, Harry, are you alright?
I'm alright. But please,
No! Thanks. The car's parked in the city square. The top floor. Building at point A0063. There. Oh, James. Thanks, Harry. Golden, I'm not gonna let you get away with this.
Okay, and what I was saying is that when I first played this, the first boss battle, one of the actual phrases it had me type was Asobolyo, which is something that Kasumi Alpha in Dead or Alive Dimensions says, which is a childish way of saying let's play.
Our Emperor shall awaken soon. Hurry, friends.
Point A0063 is just ahead.
Okay, and basically what your mission in this is to find the car, and then your level actually continues when you get into the car. But one thing that's crazy about this is a lot of these things aren't actually just like big words, because I know when I first played this, before I saw that Asobolyo, I thought these were just like really long words, but then I didn't realize that they actually were like multiple words in one. The same thing actually goes with Lupin the Third, the typing. And now I can honestly remember being in this level, because that whole like fish coming out of the zombie thing always got me. Because like, being quick with the keyboard is one thing, but having to, you just shot the zombie down dead who took several shots, you're not going to be ready right away to shoot this fish that jumps up in the air. And now you'd think these enemies would be a bit harder, but of course, all they have, as I mentioned earlier, all they have is a question mark, and the right shift and question mark are right next to each other. So all you basically have to do is press right shift and question mark at the same time, and that takes care of that character really fast. And of course, way back there, behind this guy is where the car is. So yeah, I definitely would find it cool if they added more Typing of the Dead games.
Must be the car.
Not necessarily needing arcade versions, like Typing of the Dead Overkill never got an arcade version. Or at the point of recording this,
Let's hurry.
or at the point of recording this, it hasn't even had a console version yet. But of course, I highly doubt that.
You!
Now, if you didn't hear what he said, since it's very hard to hear, he said, Sir Goldman has given me a second chance. Don't even think of getting past. And of course, go Carl. And of course, this is the exact same. This is the exact same boss fight as level 1. So it's no harder or easier than it was. Well, depending on the words that the game decides to give you. And of course, unlike House of the Dead, you can't like use 2 keyboards and play this like John Woo style, unless you're like crazy fast at typing on a keyboard. It wouldn't give you an advantage. And one thing that I always have to comment about the keyboard, at least the one that I have, is the actual Sega Dreamcast sticker that's right above the number pad on the right. Looks like it's like so cheaply placed on there, they couldn't have like printed the actual Dreamcast logo on it. Otherwise, it looks like a fairly generic keyboard. My only guess is that these keyboards are the exact same ones they would manufacture for the Naomi arcade games. So whether it be a one for the arcade or one for the console, kind of got decided when they put the end of the plug on it, whereas it's the same shell otherwise. Although, cool side fact is, in Japan for the Dreamcast console version and even the PS2 console version, they actually had different keyboards. I remember seeing a package for the Typing of the Dead for Japan. They actually had a much smaller little keyboard without the number pad on the side, and I think it was like green, which actually was pretty cool looking. But, you know, it goes without saying, Japan always gets the coolest pack-ins and everything. And now this is the same as before, where you have to type the word before this little guy gets you. And I know I had a much easier time doing this time than I did in the beginning. And if you're a native Japanese speaker and you recognize this, of what they say, you can actually tell me.
No such thing as a second chance.
And of course what James said there's no such thing as a second chance. I always like it in a lot of these games where like you have your like boss rush where... Now that was a very weird thing right there. Enemy appeared for a second, and then I guess he jumped behind me and struck me, because I hardly even noticed he came up in the first place. And now here's your level 2 boss. This guy can be hard when he wants to be. And just like before, you can only type when the thing on his stomach opens. So that gives you a little bit of extra challenge, not really all that bad. And now he's going to start to do the crazy jumpy thing. So here he comes. And the only, as I had mentioned earlier, the only boss who really changes like how he attacks you is Tower, who is the one who had all the questions. The only real difference in the second version, which is in the next level, is it doesn't have the place with the blue worm.
Better off that way.
Better off that way. And now after here, there's a couple more of those like phasing in zombies, so I actually like know what happened. And the only thing I actually found a little bit weird about this scene is that when James stopped, I'm guessing he turned the engine off, so then he had to turn it back on and keep going. But I don't know why he turns the engine off when he stops. I guess maybe he wanted to save gas. So every time you hear him go again, he starts the engine again. And now that time I actually had noticed the zombie before he had gotten me.
Prepare yourself, Goldman.
Now these guys had a very long phrase that I had to type. One thing that's weird is the actual second typing of the Dead game, there's very sparse information about the actual arcade release. Like, here it tells me that there was an arcade release, but a lot of sites don't actually have information about it.
So this is Goldman's headquarters. What? Can't be. You're...
I've been waiting for this time to come. You have no instinct. Either hide with me, or live with me. Either way, your fate is in our hands.
And now, if you never played the original House of the Dead, this is the Magician. He's actually the, I believe he's the ending boss of the House of the Dead. And of course, since James and G had killed him in House of the Dead 1, James was kind of like, yeah, how could this be? There's no way you could still be alive. We killed you. But of course, you know, when they make one genetically altered zombie bad guy, they could just make another one, really. What I think is funny is they're on the website system16.com. It has a write-up about this underneath the game. It says, this game is similar to the House of the Dead series, but there is no gun to kill the zombies. There's just a keyboard, and you must type the words that appear on the screen as fast as possible to kill the bad guys. And yes, it was an arcade game. I guess they had to put that because, like, nobody would have guessed that it was really an arcade game. Because it's kind of one of those, like, crazy things that you would think to yourself, yeah, this is only kind of like a console release. There's no way that this could possibly be a game for like, public setting. But sure enough, as you can see right in front of us, this actually was an arcade game. And strangely enough, one thing I have to say is I didn't pay all that much for this cartridge. Some guys sold it on eBay, and I got a decent deal on it, but there's some people who want like hundreds of dollars for a Typing of the Dead cartridge. But yeah, definitely don't spend that much on this game. It's really not worth it to spend like $150, $200 on this. You can usually get it for less than 50 bucks, and if you can't, wait. It's one of those many things when it comes to arcade collecting. So many people put a high value on certain things, and you're going to get a lower price on a lot of them if you wait. The only Naomi cartridge that always fetches like 150 or more is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. So that's one of those games that, like, if you want that game as the arcade version, you are going to have to pay a premium for it. But I can honestly tell you, of all games on the Naomi, the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is amazing on this. And I can tell you it really is worth the pretty penny that it may fetch. Now, it took me actually a few times to actually get this down where I would get it every time, because you didn't actually hurt the Magician unless you fully typed his word. And if you heard right there, it was actually me bashing on the keyboard, because I couldn't hit the proper keys in time, so I was like really mad that I couldn't do it. And as you see in that first time you type those 3 words, you don't actually hurt him, but when you type the 4th word, the really long one, that's when you hurt him. And the sad part is it only hurts him a little. So like when I do this is not hurting him at all. But now this last time, if I type this really quick, this will hurt him. So watch his life bar after this goes off. See, it just goes just a very little bit. That's what sadly makes this a very, very, very long boss fight. Because regardless of how quickly you type some of these things, you're not hurting him until you get through the whole sequence. And now the nice thing about this game, if you hadn't noticed it from earlier footage or earlier part of this video, when I like do really bad, the game actually will adjust itself and give me shorter words. So it actually has that like bit of scaling, so I don't you're not getting this like completely unbeatable thing. It's actually like trying to scale for your skill. I think there's 1 or 2 more of these, and then I think I don't think he changes fight modes. He just he just dies eventually. But the only problem with this boss in particular is you'll notice the actual rectangles don't change color, so you never know when you're actually going to get hit. And I can tell you it gets really annoying that you'll be just about done, and then it hits you. Like one of the earlier ones, I think I had like 1 or 2 letters left, like even right there. I had like 1 or 2 letters left, and then I get hit anyway because I just didn't do it just fast enough. So, it's one of those things. You can be pretty close, but, you know, almost only counts in horseshoes, and if you don't get it fast enough in this game, you still end up getting hurt. And of course, the 3 words can usually be pretty easy, but the last one is usually a bit longer. I'm not sure if this is the last one, or if this is the next to last. Yeah, there it is. Now he's dead for good.
Only man himself can control its fate. You're nothing.
Okay, now since we have beat the earlier 5 chapters, we can finally play Chapter 6, which is really weird that you can play Chapters 1 through 5, but you can't play 6 unless you finish the previous chapters. You'll notice now it doesn't say can't play anymore over it.
At last you've come. Friends, the door of fate shall open.
Every time I hear Goldman call you friends, I always think to myself, maybe Goldman is one of those guys who can't make friends, so he calls like all his enemies his friends because it makes him feel better about life. Because he's like, oh, nobody wants to be my friend, I'm so sad.
They're inviting me in.
Oh, he said that it seems like they're inviting me in. And now here's where you start to see a lot more of those zombies that just kind of phase in with the world. So they show up a lot more than they would earlier. Because if you remember in the previous level, I only saw these zombies with when I was driving in the car. And just like the ones who would run across, the ones who kind of like phase in and out like this, have the multiple phrases that you have to type in order to actually beat them. But it's not really all that bad, as their phrases aren't too long. The only problem is, as I get to the end of a playthrough here, I kind of run out of stuff to say. But no matter how many times I do it, doing that hyphen always becomes much, much harder.
No turning back now.
And now the only problem is my commentary might be a little bit off from how the gameplay happens, because when I was recording this right now, it actually paused the video for a second. I don't know, the computer was doing something, so if I'm kind of off on the cutscenes, forgive me, because I'm trying to do my best here, but I'm more than halfway through the video, and I really wouldn't want to start all over again. But I will try to be my best to not talk over all the cutscenes. Now, my only guess here is that these zombies that kind of phase in are kind of like their new experimental versions, and they're supposed to be a lot harder. And one thing you will notice, if you hadn't noticed already, that instead of the boxes starting as green, they start as orange. So, that makes this much harder because you're not actually able to type until it's maybe the box is halfway being done. So some of them, except for the challenge ones here, go from orange to red to flashing, so you don't have as much time. And now this challenge here was only defeat a certain number, but sadly, since I was attacked, I actually had lost that one. And now I was trying to remember what other Sega game actually had those little people that it showed with your rank, but I think I actually remember now. It was like it was Dynamite Cop, I think, that actually did that when it actually showed you moving from level to level, which of course was another Sega game, so that's easy to explain why it was doing that. I'm guessing all the stuff that you end up getting by pressing a key when you see some random item are like bonus items that power you up, but since in playing this Japanese version I have no idea what that text says, I couldn't tell you if I'm getting the effect or not. And now since we're facing tower again here, it's going to be the same thing, but I believe I actually did a much better job here of answering the questions than I'd done earlier, but no guarantees, of course, because they're still the same Japanese questions as earlier, and I still don't know as much Japanese out as I wish I would at this point. So I believe when I was actually playing this, I was just kind of doing the whole let's try to guess which one is the right answer, because none of these words I really know what they mean, and as I'd mentioned in my first video, even if I was able to read these, I probably wouldn't be able to read the Japanese fast enough to be able to react in time. But the only thing that's really annoying is like when you pick the wrong one, it flashes on the one which was right, but at that point you can't actually type that anymore. It's just kind of telling you what the right answer was, and then you get attacked. So it's kind of like an underhanded way of saying, yeah, this is the right answer. But I'm going to leave the word on the screen, so it's too late, but yeah, you can see what it's all about. But I found that in this playthrough, I seem to be right a bit more often than I was earlier. Because earlier it seemed like this took a lot longer, but it just could be because, since I'd mentioned it doesn't have the part where the blue worm is going all around the ground, it just makes it a much quicker boss fight. And a few times it'll happen where I don't actually get finished typing the word, and then it will just get me. But yeah, it's just like anything. I'm trying to type a word really fast in time. I could imagine if you actually knew what this said, just as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of the time between being able to read it and then being able to choose the proper answer, because you're basically gonna be reading the question and then quickly have to read all three answers and decide which one's right. I could remember in playing the Dreamcast version where this was actually all in English since it got a release in English-speaking countries. Even with knowing what word it was, it still was kind of hard because, as I'd said, you have to read the question, read the three answers, then think about what the right answer was. So it's not like 2 plus 2 equals what. It's trivia questions. And of course, eventually this boss fight will be once again over. And just like in the earlier levels where you faced the other two enemies, this is just a sub-boss. This isn't actually the boss. The thing that Goldman has been like working on for the whole game is what you're actually gonna end up fighting. I think it's called the Emperor. And as I had mentioned, I was very happy you didn't have to face the second part of that. So, it made it a bit quicker of an experience, but I guess they would have had to make a larger area for Tower to be fought in order for that to happen. Or it would have to like go to a different area entirely in the game for you to be able to face the blue worm part of the tower. Now this was one of those many parts in the game where at this point I actually had wished that I would just be able to fight the final boss and get it over with, because, you know, after a while you're kind of like, yeah, I've had enough of these zombies, and you just want to get to the end of the game since you're so close already. Now this mission that I'm fighting here, I believe this is another one of those, you just have to survive for 30 seconds. Now, I don't remember at all if I was able to do it, but nah, it looks like I wasn't able to do it at all.
I've been waiting for you, friends.
Goldman, do you know what you're doing?
I'm fully aware of what I'm doing. Can't you see? Man committed a sin, disturbing the life cycle of nature. The original sin that man is responsible to protect the life cycle. I have made a creature to rule over mankind. This is the final battle. Show yourself, our new ruler, the Emperor.
Now, I believe when you actually did this in the House of the Dead 2, I think it was something like you had to hit those orbs instead of just having to type some random words. Now, I don't recall if it was actually me who had gotten here or if I had seen a friend do this once, but I remember whoever I'd seen play this at one point not doing all that well, because this is a pretty hard fight regardless of if you're typing or you're shooting. And this is another one, if you don't type all his words quickly, you don't hurt him at all, as the actual typing, unlike playing the actual part where you're killing the enemies, the actual typing of the letters doesn't hurt the enemy. It's just when you finally finish typing all the words that you actually end up hurting him. And speaking of the magician from the previous level's boss fight, I actually had faced him a couple times, but it seems like no matter how many times I had faced him, I'd always do pretty bad. I'm not even sure if I'd ever beaten him, but that'll be in another video. I'll probably go to the Sega Saturn version and try to get through that whole game. At some point, hopefully. And then maybe back to House of the Dead 2 with the actual light gun setup. Which, if you've seen my new last new pickups video with the 32-inch TV, all the light gun games are amazing. It kind of gives you that whole like you're playing in the arcade feel on one of those like deluxe production screens. And now, what you're probably seeing now is the second part of the Emperor, where he actually summons the various bosses he'll show, and you have to type the words really quick here. And I think no matter how many times I did it, when it showed the chainsaw guy, I was never able to get the word typed in time. But some of the other ones I was able to do a good deal of the time. And it even shows the tower boss. But, you know, it took a few times for a lot of these for me to finally get done with them. And finally be able to type them. And my only thought is that when it speaks to a tower, it's really referring to the center dragon, because when he actually does it, it looks like he's only summoning the center dragon, not like the, as I'd call them, the lesser dragons. And just like with the magician, when you actually end up hurting this boss, it actually doesn't hurt him all that much, which, as I had mentioned in that boss fight, ends up making it be a much longer boss battle. And now, strangely enough, with this part with the questions, I actually didn't get any of the questions wrong at all. Which I'm not sure if this is, if this is something where you're right or wrong, or if it's asking your opinion of something. But I was actually able to do this, all of the questions here, which was actually pretty cool. So I was very happy, and all I did was like went to the top one, the second one, and then the third one. So it's not that I actually knew what I was doing, I just did them in order. And it looks like it gives you an awfully long amount of time, because I never ran out of time in any of those.
Goldman!
Friends, it is not over yet.
Is that all you have to say?
In time, a successor will come. Farewell, friends.
Now, I actually believe in the House of the House of the Dead 2, he actually does jump to his death, but they just added the whole bungee cord thing as like a comedic effect thing. Now, the sad part is I didn't realize that in these credits you could actually be typing all the names until like the very end. You'll see me type like one letter, but I'm guessing you'd unlock some sort of bonus because that's what all those pods on the screen were for. But yeah, Typing of the Dead, it is an excellently fun game. It's great to get your typing up. I can only say the only downside of doing this whole video, which was like, I believe it was an hour and 10 minutes total playthrough, is I know my right wrist got very sore after a while, after all this typing, because you have to type an awful lot to get through this. Definitely help if you have a partner, and that's why Goldman always referred to you as friends, because there's always supposed to be two players, and he addresses you as such regardless if you have two players or not. But yeah, Typing of the Dead, very good game, whether you play it on PC, Dreamcast, or PlayStation 2. I would highly recommend it, but as I said, for the arcade version, I'd really only highly recommend it to either a hardcore arcade collector or somebody who has a location they want this to be their arcade game. Well, I shall see you later in my next video. Bye.